more than one D flip-flops connected in a certain sequence. A shift register is, if you say an n-bit shift register, it's basically n flip-flops connected in series. What it means is the output of one flip-flop is connected to the input of the next flip-flop. Then it goes on. All of them have the same clock. That's the primary difference between any other. That's one thing that makes the shift register so unique, is that all of them have the same clock. All the flip-flops. What that helps us with is, at every clock pulse, let it be a rising edge or a falling edge based on what kind of a flip-flop you're designing. Assuming that we have a rising edge clock over here, at every rising edge, the input, initially whatever input, assume that I provide a sequence of numbers over here. Whatever input I provide over here will be stored onto this flip-flop. By storing, I mean it appears at the output, at the first clock pulse, at the first rising edge. Now at the next rising edge, since the output of this flip-flop is the input to this flip-flop, at the next rising edge, the first bit was 0, so 0 appeared over here at the first clock pulse. At the next clock pulse, the next input appears over here, and whatever the output was at this point appears over here. At the third clock pulse, they all move another bit, making it 0 again, which is the third bit. The 1, which was the output over here, becomes the input, giving you the output of 1 over here. And this 0 appears over here. So an n-bit shift register can hold up to n value, n bits. And it takes n clock cycles for the entire sequence to appear at the outputs of each and every respective flip-flop. That's what a flip-flop, a shift register does. It shifts the bit either to the left or to the right based on how you've connected the outputs and the inputs. In this case, in this particular example, the bits are moving towards the right. And this is called the shift right. Do you see that? The bits are shifting one by one towards the, no, this is the left. It's moving one by one towards the left. You have to see from the perspective of the flip-flops. They're moving to the left. So this is called the shift left register, or left shift register, either ways. Okay. That's what a shift register does. Now, you can have the same thing in the other direction. The only difference is that the output of this flip-flop is connected to the input of this flip-flop. The output of this flip-flop. And now the bits are moving towards the right. Do you see that? And this is what you call as a shift, a right shift register. So a shift register can be of two types, a left shift or a right shift, based on how you've connected the outputs and the inputs. If they are connected so that the outputs of the right shift, output of the left shift moves towards the right, then it's called the right shift register. If the output of the right shift moves towards the left, then it's called the left shift register. Okay? It depends on how the bits are moving in the register. Okay? Now, you can go ahead and modify this so that there's one combination of all these different types of registers. And that is what we call as the universal shift register. A universal shift register can have multiple functions based on how you give the inputs. It can do a left shift, it can do a right shift, it can do a parallel load, or it can just hold on to the value that it currently has. When I say that it holds on to the value it has, what I mean is that the output remains constant. Irrespective of the clock, irrespective of what kind of inputs you give, it is just going to hold on to the value that it currently has. Okay? Unless you change the conditions at the inputs. So, the problem that I have given you guys, I'm not going to explain the exact thing, but I'm going to explain to you a version of that problem. When you Google a universal shift register, you get an image, and this is the truth table for that image. It is different from the one that I've given to you guys, so don't go ahead and just implement that. So, in this universal shift register, I'm using the select lines S1 and S0 to control the functioning of a shift register. I say that when it's 0, 0, it is going to hold on to the value that it currently has. When it is 0, 1, it's going to do a right shift. When it is 1, 0, it does a left shift. When it is 1, 1, it does a parallel load. Okay? So obviously, as soon as you see select lines and if you have just one output and you have a bunch of select lines which are governing the functioning of any electronic circuit, the first thing that should come to mind is the mux. When you have just one output and a bunch of select lines, to choose something from them. Over here we're going to choose one of these functions to appear at the shift register. So obviously you have to use a mux. How would you connect it? So, and in the problem I've also given that to be a 4-bit universal shift register. Dr. Hargrove is going to cover this in the shift registers and probably in the class too, but I just wanted to give you guys because some of you have to submit it next week. So this 4-bit shift register, obviously you will have 4 flip-flops. All of them are going to have the same clock. Let's just assume that the clock is a rising edge clock. The flip-flop works with the rising edge. This is your D, this is your Q, this is your clock. D, Q, clock. Let's just say this is D flip-flop 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, in the most ideal condition, each and every one of these flip-flops has to be controlled because this function has to appear at each and every one of them. So I will have 4 muxes. Let's just say mux 1, mux 2, mux 3. The outputs of the mux should be connected to the input of the D flip-flop. Obviously, the mux will have 4 inputs. And you want the same function to appear at all of them. So the select lines for the two muxes, I'm going to keep them the same. So let's just say select line 1, select line 0. This implies that there's a connection. If you don't see a dot over there, that means there's no connection over there. Okay? So, what have we done over here? We've made sure that all the D flip-flops have the same clock. All the muxes have the same select lines, so all of them do the same function at any given point of time. The output of each respective mux is connected to the respective flip-flop, and the output of the flip-flop is what you're observing. The inputs of the muxes is what we haven't decided yet, and we haven't accounted for any of these functions yet. So how would you do it? Now, when it is a 0, 0, let me just go ahead and label these lines too. Let this be 0, 1, 2, 3. Now, if I want to hold on to the value, that means that if these select lines are 0, 0, this line is going to be selected and will appear at the output of the mux. The output of the mux is what is connected to the flip-flop, right? If I want to hold on to the value, all I have to do is connect the output of the D flip-flop to the line 0. So at every clock pulse, the output of the D flip-flop, which is Q, which also appears over here, will be selected if these two lines are 0, 0. If this is 0, 0, Q, which is the output currently, will appear at the input of D. And so, at the next clock pulse, the output is again going to be the same value. If this is 0, 0 appears over here, 0 appears over here. At the next clock pulse, again 0 is going to appear at the output. You see that? It's like a loop. But I'm completing the loop by connecting Q to the line 0. This will work only if these two lines are 0, 0. If these two lines are not 0, 0, this part is disconnected from this entire part. And so you will not see the same output over here. Do you see that? This is a connected graph. This is a closed loop. Only if these two lines are 0, 0. Only when these two are 0, 0, this Q appears over here. Otherwise, it's not going to appear. That's why when these two select lines are 0, 0, it is going to do the function of holding on to the value. And that's the only function it's going to do. Yes?
So the mux is not a mux of the input values, it's the mux of the functions?
Come again?
The multiplexers, they're of the functions or of the input values?
You have to perform these functions using a circuit. The output should appear as if it was constant. It did not change, even if the inputs change. Now, if you see over here, actually, give me 2 more minutes, and I think we will get to that point. It shouldn't be so difficult to understand then. First thing is clear is that even if the clock is changing, even if you see a rising edge on the clock, the output is not changing, the output is remaining constant. Is that part clear? So the clock has no influence on the output if S1 and S0 are 0, 0. And so it is holding on to the value. Let's look at 1, 1. 1, 1 implies that I should do a parallel load. For a parallel load, obviously you need to have external inputs, right? 1, 1 implies these two lines are 1, 1. If these two lines are 1, 1, line 3 is selected, right? Before we get to that, all of them